Hi, I'm personal injury attorney Greg DiLeo. I've been practicing personal injury law in the New Orleans area for almost 42 years now. One of the things I've noticed is that a lot of times people are unclear, confused about their automobile insurance. I handle a lot of automobile accident cases, and automobile accident cases have one thing in common. That is, you are making a claim against someone for injuries, medical bills, lost wages, and pain and suffering. And you're relying upon the insurance that that person has, as well as the insurance that you have. That is, if they are at fault. If you are at fault, it's your liability insurance that kicks in. If you're not at fault and the other person is, it's your uninsured motorist coverage which kicks in. So let me try to explain some of these terms to you and go through a typical one. I'm going to share my screen with you, and hopefully this will make more sense to you. This is a typical declarations page. That's the insurance industry form that explains what your coverages are. And so you should look for this in your insurance policy packet, different from your proof of insurance card, which does not have this information. So the declarations page, if you look over here, you'll see liability coverage. This person has $15,000 per person, $30,000 per accident. In Louisiana, you cannot drive a car unless you have liability insurance in at least those amounts, $15,000 per person, 30 per accident. What that means is that if you are at fault, the most any one person can recover from your insurance company is $15,000. But if you're at fault and there are more than one person in the other vehicle that you injure, the most that all of those people can recover is $30,000. Now, it doesn't take much in this day and age with high medical bills for a personal injury claim to exceed that $15,000 value. And so when that happens, you'll see further down the next item of damages, or next item of coverage is property damage limit. That's $25,000. That's your insurance when you were at fault, paying at most $25,000 to the driver's vehicle that you caused the damage to. But the most important one that I wanted to talk about is what's called uninsured motorist coverage. We call that for short. And coverage also means underinsured motorist coverage. That is insurance that you buy, but it gives me, as a personal injury attorney, when you're injured by someone else's fault, a second layer of insurance money to go after to cover your damages. So in this example of a 15 per person, 30 per accident policy, you'll see that this is the typical type of coverage that comes automatically by law. Next, I'm going to show you a declarations page. This one's from Allstate. You'll see that the automobile liability insurance limits for bodily injury are the same as the last one you saw. The state minimum, 15 per person, 30,000 per accident. But you'll see that there is nothing on this form about uninsured motorist coverage. Now, what that means is that if the person who has this policy is injured by the fault of another vehicle driver, and that vehicle is uninsured, they don't have uninsured motorist coverage. That means that they have no money to collect. And if somebody does not have insurance, chances are they're not going to have the personal assets to satisfy a judgment, and they could file for bankruptcy anyway. And so that's another reason why it's so important to carry uninsured motorist coverage. The next item I'm going to show you is a declarations page where someone bought uninsured motorist coverage, but they bought a particular kind of motorist coverage called economic only uninsured motorist coverage. I don't think economic only uninsured motorist coverage is a good insurance product. It's a rather new insurance product that's cropped up over the last few years. And what it really does is benefit your insurance company and not you. You are wasting your money, in my opinion, by purchasing this insurance. In my opinion, it is trash insurance coverage because you can never practically use it. From a practical standpoint, in order to get something under this uninsured motorist coverage that is economic only, let's say you are injured and your claim is worth $50,000 between your medical bills, lost wages, and pain and suffering. And the other driver only has $15,000 of insurance. Well, normally, once your damages are at least $15,000, your UM coverage would kick in and you could go to your insurance company for the balance of whatever insurance, the amount of your coverage you've got. But with economic only you've got to basically incur the damages first, medical bills and lost wages. You've got to show your insurance company that you've had this medical treatment, you've got these bills, and that the underlying insurance for the person who is at fault wasn't enough. Now that's all well and good, but if you don't have the money to pay for your medical bills, and let's say, and this is this is why it's so important. Let's say you're injured, you're under medical treatment, and your doctor wants to do a medical treatment that is not covered by insurance, an injection, or your insurance company copay is so high that you can't afford it. You've got to borrow that money or find another source to get it. And then once you incur the bill, you can submit it to your insurance company under the economic only coverage, and then they'll pay it. But if you don't have the money, you won't be able to get the medical treatment, and you don't get anything for pain and suffering. Economic only is economic damages, medical bills and lost wages, but you've got to incur them first in order to get them. That's why it's a terrible product, and insurance companies should not be selling it to you under the guise of trying to get your premiums lower. It's bad insurance to have. Next, I'm going to show you how people end up not having uninsured motorist coverage. This is a standard uninsured motorist bodily injury rejection form. Don't ever sign one of these. You have the right to, but it's never in your best interest to do so. You'll see in the very first line up here, uninsured motorist bodily injury coverage is insurance that pays persons insured by your policy who are injured in an accident caused by an owner or operator of an uninsured or underinsured vehicle. And then you'll see here, by law, your policy will include uninsured motorist bodily injury coverage in the same amounts as your bodily liability coverage, unless you request otherwise. And this is the form that the insurance agent will put in front of you, either online or in person, and say, do you want Remember, it automatically comes with your policy unless you sign one of these forms. And it's a mistake to sign this form. It gives you 4 choices, and none of them are in your best interest to sign. Number 1 is selecting coverage for economic and non-economic losses, which is fine, but with lower limits than your bodily injury. You don't want that. You want as much as your liability, at least. The second one, and this is the one that the client I had that signed this form did, they selected economic only uninsured motorist coverage with the same limits as their liability insurance. So as you saw in the last example, they have $100,000 of economic only coverage, but you're going to have to pay out of pocket those expenses first, those economic damages first, before you can recover them and get reimbursed for them by your insurance company. So The next one is even worse. That's economic only coverage with lower limits than your bodily injury. And then the fourth one is I don't want coverage at all, which is the worst one that you can select. And this is an example of someone who rejected it. Now, this person is totally unprotected. They don't have any money other than the insurance money for the person that caused the accident. If that person is uninsured, and that can happen for a number of reasons, they're an excluded driver, they didn't make their payments, they just decided to drive without insurance in the first place, they are going to be uninsured. The more typical scenario is that they've got insurance, but it's the state minimum of $15,000. And when you're injured by them, it doesn't take much for your injuries to be more than $15,000. If you sign a form like this, you will then be stuck with getting only $15,000 for the other driver. I've had wrongful death cases where people were killed in a tragic motor vehicle accident by the fault of someone else who only had $15,000, and they did not carry uninsured motorist coverage. That means all they get is $15,000. Often there are medical liens involved. There are other costs. There's attorney's fees and attorney's expenses just to be able to recover that $15,000. The injured victim or their family won't see any of this in that sort of situation. Again, that's why uninsured motorist coverage is so important. So please don't sign these forms. It may save you a couple of bucks on your insurance premium, but ask your insurance agent for the difference between the two. When you buy automobile insurance, you are not only buying it in case you're at fault, you're buying it in case the other person is at fault. And your uninsured motorist coverage is there to give you a second layer of insurance money to go after to satisfy the sum total of your damages for medical bills, lost wages, and pain and suffering. Thank you for listening to this video. I hope it was helpful. I hope it helps you understand. And most importantly, I hope you never need to know any of these things and that you never get into an accident. But if you do, I'm here and I'd like to help. Thank you.